Good evening, everyone, and happy Memorial Day. Give me a brief second while I share this link to a couple places, and we'll be good to go. Evening, Free Spirit Press. Happy Memorial Day. You know, first and foremost, today is about a day of remembering all those who have sacrificed their lives for the very freedoms that we have. Today's the day we remember and honor those who have fought for those very freedoms and our liberties. I've touched on it. I come from a family that's proudly served since the beginning of the founding of this country. Which was the reason I took a step and created this channel to begin with about a year ago. So, for me, Memorial Day is just not about picnics, barbecues, spending time with family and friends. It's also remembering all those people that sacrificed so much so we could enjoy these freedoms and be able to come here on YouTube, do these live streams every day, post on Facebook, Twitter. If it wasn't for these people that's laid down their lives for us, we wouldn't have this privilege. And it's just not one day. We step back and remember them. We do it every day. We honor them. That's why I had some issues with certain things last year. With what I found was disrespect to our soldiers and to those who have fought and lost their lives with the kneeling at the national anthem. There's just so many things that people forget. This day is not just the day we honor those who have recently fallen. I was kind of shocked. I don't know what. Shocked, and we get caught up in things, I guess. That's why I was just kind of shocked. Friday, I was in town, and I seen that the VFW hall was having a cookout honoring the vets and celebrating Memorial Day. So, I stopped in. I knew a couple of the old vets that were there. And, I was amazed and kind of shocked to see that, out of the 20 vets that were there, only 5 of them were from World War II. The rest were from Vietnam and Iraq and some of our previous wars, more recent wars. It was the people that fought in World War II. They're in their 90s, and very few are left. We're losing that part of our culture and history. It felt kind of good to spend a couple hours with those guys, just talking and thanking them for what they've done. It didn't get no big crowd. Like I said, there's only like 20, 30 vets that showed up. And basically it was just a few family and friends that showed up to the VFW hall. I mean, I didn't even see on the news anywhere that it was posted. It was just happened to see a flyer and went down there. I used to go to those things all the time with my grandfather back when I was a kid. So, I've always had a lot of respect for the Legion halls, the VFWs and stuff. Always supported them when they did their little fundraisers and stuff. Because I drove by today. I drove by because I had to go. It's been one chaotic month. But I had to go to my brother's. I drove by a couple of cemeteries and didn't see the flags out on the gravestones. Kind of really set me off a bit because, that's something that's a time tradition that we honor the grave sites with the soldiers and stuff. But I remember the headaches we had to go to get my grandfather's plaque, for his World War II plaque when he died. And to see that, a bunch of graveyards, there was no flags out. Where, some of these graveyards I know have veterans that are buried there. And, it kind of reminded me of like, man, we celebrate Memorial Day. We get caught up in the barbecues, get-togethers. But yet we've got cemeteries where the flags aren't being posted. Kind of made me sit back and reflect on some things. These are the people that fought and died for our freedoms. Whether we agree with whatever war they were in, they still joined to serve with their belief and ideology that they're going to protect our freedoms, protect our Constitution. They paid the ultimate sacrifice. And it's just not recent wars. We have back in the Civil War era, Revolutionary War, French and Indian War, which I was reminded here. It was Defiance. It actually made the news. They were doing a thing in Defiance honoring the soldiers and Indians from the French and Indian War. At one of the old forts in Fort Defiance. Because here in Ohio, there was a lot of the French and Indian War happened in this area where I'm at. So it was kind of nice to see that remembering of the history, remembering why we fought for so many things, so we could, enjoy our freedoms. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the barbecues, but it's like I've stated in last month's magazine and previous videos. Use this opportunity when you're having these get-togethers to talk with your family, your friends, bring up why we celebrate Memorial Day. Take advantage of these gatherings. Because if it wasn't for those that sacrificed, we wouldn't have the ability to have these gatherings. There's countries out there where they don't have these freedoms. And we know for the last 6 months, past year, we've seen how much of our very own freedoms have been under attack. How they want to strip us of the right, our rights to express ourselves, to talk about subjects, have an opinion, a view. You know, today's a great day to remember those older wars that founded this country, why they were fought. You know, I think we just get caught up in everything, and there's just so much going on. That we miss out on so much. You know, I think about the stuff that I've seen happen over in the UK the past week. I mean, how long before we start seeing that happen here? Now, this is why we don't forget. We don't forget why our fellow soldiers have fought and sacrificed their lives in the pursuit of freedoms, our liberties. You know, I guess some people think freedom is free. Freedom comes with a price. And you know that price is what our soldiers pay. It's what our patriots pay. It's what people that stand up and speak their mind, have a voice, that pay. When they get censored, harassed, doxxed. You know, I think people forget. They think, you know, there's many forms of war. It's just not war on a battlefield. You know, I've been following a few things here of late, working on a few things in between times when I actually got time. It seems like every time I sit down to either do a video or work on the magazine, something comes up. I gotta step away from it. So it's like, it's not been a good month. You know, and I think today topped it off, passing those couple cemeteries, and it was like, why? Well, there is a reason why, and I kind of found this out Friday. You know, even though they did the event for free, the fact was, you know, they're hurting. They're hurting. They're not getting donations. They're not getting money to be able to do these things. Be able to best buy the flags and plant the flags at the cemeteries and stuff. And, you know, that's kind of sad, especially for, you know, this area, to see that it's like history's being forgotten. Their sacrifices being forgotten. You know, I kind of found it very disrespectful, you know, which prompted me to swing by where my grandfather's buried and his brother's buried on the way back home to make sure that, you know, their flags were up, which, you know, they were. That cemetery's, you know, local legion's right down the road, so they're on top of it. But it's just, you know, the reality of it. I guess, I don't know. My grandfather died when he was 72, so in the 90s, so, you know, but his other brother's still alive. I guess we forget that that generation's about gone, and they should never be forgotten for what they fought for, what they believed in. You know, we invest so much time into things that sometimes we overlook some of the simplest things and realize, I've never talked about how hard it was for us to get my grandfather's plaque, for his World War II plaque, and the hoops and stuff we had to jump through, paperwork we had to file. It was ridiculous. It took us almost a year to be able to, before we got his plaque, to be able to put on his tombstone. And we went through this. My family went through the same problem when his brother died. Same headaches, same paperwork. It's like, how can you forget, a simple gesture? You want to make people spend all this money and work trying to get a plaque that is to honor. And it was like, it's just, there's just so much stuff that pisses you off when you start thinking about how our vets are treated. Clear down from the medical VA hospitals. We've heard the stories, we've read the articles. To me, it's like the ultimate disrespect that you could show somebody that's willing to sacrifice their life to protect and honor your freedoms, to fight for what we believe in. People say, oh, we're hated around the world because of our political views. No. Truth is, why we're hated around the world so much is because the freedoms we're allowed to have, the values, the morals that we're allowed to express freely, share. I think sometimes us Americans really forget how great our country is, but yet how important our Constitution is, our Bill of Rights is. We forget our very why, we used to call it the American dream. Why you talk to people, they want to come here to live the American dream. You know what? Our soldiers haven't forgot that. They believe that. They defend that every day. They believe in that when they go serve, they're going to serve and protect our freedom, no matter where it may be. That's what makes our country so hated, is the fact that we're starting all these wars everywhere. It's the fact that they don't like when people can have all this freedom, all this ability to be yourself, be who you want to be, dream big and try to achieve those dreams. Yes, I know. In most cases, some of that's a pipe dream anymore. But that's not supposed to be. That's not what our country was ever about. It was about that American idea, the American dream. was about us being free, not oppressed, not censored, having rights, being protected from illegal search and seizure, being protected when we want to express our views and opinions, being protected when we want to have a different religious belief than the norm. These are the very things our soldiers fight for. And yes, I agree. Sometimes we get put into places where we have no business being. But sometimes I think our politicians need to realize we need to stop being the police of the world. But you need to ask yourself this. What if we stopped? What if we just mind our own business and let them do what they want? How long before organizations like the UN, NATO, other countries start saying, well, we can't have this country with all these being able to speak and say whatever they want. We can't allow these people in this country to have these weapons. How long before another country that picks up where we stop doing starts saying, we need to control this country, our country. We need to stop allowing people in America to be able to stream and talk about what they want. Stop them from writing articles about what they want. You know, I remember growing up, I always remember talking to people, or you meet people from other countries. You know, they used to talk about how great America was. They want the American dream, how they would love to come here and have that, because they don't have that in their country. They don't have these very freedoms and liberties we have. You know, and that made you, in a sense, I guess it's kind of prideful, but it made you proud to hear that. Where's that pride today? You know, we get caught up in the trivial BS of who's right, who's wrong, whatever label you want to attach yourself, which does nothing but further divide us. I mean, you talk about it till you're blue in your face. Most people, oh, we're not that divided. You know, honestly, if you don't like what I've just said, you're probably not going to like my next few videos. You know, that's a lot I want to talk about. I want to talk about schools. I want to talk a little bit more about that division, diversity, the labels. I want to get into more about how our freedoms are constantly under attack. Because, you know, the more I talk to people, I do interact when I'm out and about. I take that opportunity to interact with people. Yes, my antisocial self takes time to chat with people. Guess I'm not that antisocial, but, you know, and I can carry a conversation with pretty much any group of people. Always been one of my gifts. Doesn't matter age, gender, or anything. Usually to carry a conversation on. Yeah, it's. I think it's doing it to me too. I mean, go figure. You type, Memorial Day special broadcast, and they want to screw with you. Yeah, I've been watching my counts go up, down. That's the other thing that pisses me off. We're celebrating Memorial Day, but yet we have corporations here in the United States that are based in the United States, owned by people, Americans, but they won't respect and honor our constitutional rights. They will not respect and honor what we're celebrating today. And we're not even celebrating, we're remembering all those that have fought and died for our freedoms. But yet we have social platforms. Oh, you can't have free speech. You can't have your own opinion. We're going to mess with your channel while you're live streaming. To me, that is just as much as a blatant disrespect to all those who died that we're honoring today as it is to kneel during the national anthem. Because, for most of us, the national anthem, the Pledge of Allegiance, when we do that, it is remembering and honoring those that serve and who have lost their lives serving to protect our freedoms. I have nothing wrong against protesting. My problem has always been this. Even with Kaepernick, whatever his name, stupid football player, ex-football player. My whole problem with him is he's got a big mouth, paid too much money, wants to decide to protest something, but yet you didn't see him in St. Louis, you didn't see him in Ferguson, you didn't see him in Toledo, or not Toledo, Cleveland. No. He comes off the football field after the game's over and goes back to his $1 million mansion. I've got no respect for that. Now, if you would have done it, but yet you were going to these protests, using your publicity, your fame, I'd have more respect for that. More people would have had respect for that because they see you're just not protesting and going back to a $1 million mansion. They see that you actually believe in that you see something's wrong and you're addressing it. There's a right way to do things. And there's a wrong way. He did it the wrong way. A bunch of them did. There's very few players that I can even name that you see actually going into their communities when they have a cause. But yet those people don't get honored. I know a lot of people don't care for Terrell Suggs. But I tell you what, Terrell Suggs, every time he got a chance to get on camera, interviewed, he'd always bring up about the communities. He'd always talk about it and address it. He's done things. If that man would have took at me, I would actually listen. Because he does do things outside the field. There's a difference. Instead of some spoiled brat that had everything handed down to him on a silver spoon. I don't know what schools are teaching kids these days when it comes to the sports side. But I know when I was growing up playing sports, and I played a lot of sports. Baseball, soccer, basketball, volleyball. We were taught the reason why we stood and addressed the national anthem was for the soldiers. It was for those that serve, the policemen, firefighters, EMTs. Maybe they don't teach that stuff anymore. Well, I know they don't. I think people had just completely forgotten that, We, those in the communities that are constantly getting hammered, censored, we understand it that, our very freedoms are under attack every day. I mean, let's look at all the emails I know everybody's received. Any platform that that you're on or a member of, you got a notification of terms of change the policies and terms of services. Why? Because our Congress decided to pass something all in the name of security. I think the last video I did, I talked about what was passed and getting ready to wait for a governor to sign in Maryland, which basically was so open for interpretation. Me just mentioning it could actually get me, if I lived in Maryland, arrested. I mean, our politicians, our judges, lawyers, they don't care about the sacrifices that our soldiers have given. Look at them when they start taking and stripping our constitutional rights away. When we have federal judges making rulings that a lawyer doesn't have confidentiality with client. Or we have politicians that say, if you say anything about a politician or theoretical polls or whatever, guns, you talk about Second Amendment rights, you could face up to a year in jail plus a fine. Tell me how they're respecting and honoring those that have fallen, protecting our freedoms. They're not. Anytime a congressman or a state official passes or puts in a bill or passes a bill that violates our Constitution, they are also disrespecting all those who have fought and died trying to protect those very freedoms. But yet, we vote, coming midterms, we'll re-vote them in. Why? Because we get caught in the label games. Or we allow ourselves to be deceived saying there's no other candidate. But yet, we know that in most cases there's more than just that candidate because, well, they don't get the attention because of how they're publicized or propagandized or whatever, Or they don't get a spot during the debates because they don't make the percentage marker. And they want to talk about influencing elections. I'm sorry. They've been influencing elections since they've started televising debates and telling people, oh no, you can't be on the stage. You don't meet the requirement of percentage. So nobody gets to hear their voice. there's just so much that's gone on today that it's just, we have a Memorial Day, but yet our elected officials could care less. Oh, I need to look good for today so I get votes. I need to say a few colorful words that they don't mean. Because 2 days from now, they're going to be in Congress or in the state house trying to strip more of our rights away. But yet, we overlook it. So now, today's not, for me, a barbecue type of day. Today, supposed to be honoring those that have fought for our very freedoms that our elected officials seem to care less about. Today's a day to honor even those that serve. When's the last time you walked up to a vet and thanked them for the service they've done? When's the last time you bought a vet a cup of coffee or a meal? Why do we have such a huge homeless vet problem? Did you see? There's not really. Memorial Day, I can't see much to celebrate right now. Let's not get on the suicide rates for vets. Let's not talk about that, which is ridiculous. They can't get the help they need. And it seems as each generation comes up, gets the voting age, become young adults. How long before even more of these cemeteries no longer receive the flags, to where the only cemetery we see flags posted up on Memorial Day is Arlington? The reality of it, our World War II vets did a lot when they returned. They honored the Vietnam vets. They kept the Legion halls up. They made sure that those that had died were honored and remembered, not forgotten. We all talk about 9/11. We'll never forget what happened in 9/11. Eventually that will be forgotten in history as well. As newer generations come up, younger people start coming up, it'll just be another marker, another age that has passed on. I remember growing up on Memorial Day, you could go down south to the big battlefields, Gettysburg. All the soldiers were honored. You could go into Boston, Philly. Our forefathers were honored. The patriots, that fought during the Revolutionary War, they were honored and remembered. If it wasn't for those patriots, those revolutionaries, we wouldn't have the country we have today. It would look entirely different. It would look, oh, I want to report what's going on about about this certain group of people, refugees, and what they're doing to people, oh, I get immediately arrested, charged, convicted, and locked up without due process. Why? Because I was adhering to my First Amendment right, but oh wait, we won't have that. Think about that. It wasn't for what our forefathers done, for those that died and sacrificed their lives in the pursuit of liberty, freedom, and justice. The very same thing that Common Core has tried to strip out of history books that the Boston Tea Party never happened. The very same thing that we have elected congressmen trying to say, you can't express yourself freely on the internet. You can't have an opinion or a view. Since when did the Nazis take over our government? Because that's exactly what Adolf Hitler and the Nazi regime did during World War II. We're going to burn all these books. We're going to teach our youth that all this propaganda, that everybody else that doesn't adhere to this is our enemy. Next thing you know, we're all caught up in World War II against probably one of the worst monsters the world has seen up until that date. I mean, of course, as we know through history, those that studied history, there's always been that monster that's raised up and did deeds just as bad, if not worse, throughout history. You know, we have organizations. Oh, we'll give it an inch on this. You know, we as an American people, we've gotten to the point where we rely on organizations. We forget exactly what's written above the Constitution. We the people. Not an organization. We the people. We don't need an organization, because what organizations have become today is corporations. Corporations that could care less if our rights are taken away or not. They just want your money. But yet, most people don't see that. Oh no, they defend us. But they've given an inch time and time again. And when they give an inch, our government takes a mile. You know, we get caught in that paradigm of left-right. It ain't about left or right. You should never be voting on a label to begin with. You should be voting for a person that represents the Constitution, that represents the people, represents us, not a political label. Because if you adhere to a political label, whether it be left, right, independent, whatever, there's so many, it's ridiculous, you get caught up in the label. You become part of that label. You can't see outside that label. So therefore, when somebody comes up that is about the people, that is about the Constitution, that's willing to fight and defend your freedoms and liberties, because he calls himself an independent or a Democrat or even a Republican, depending on what label you choose to adhere to, you don't hear that person's voice. You only hear, oh, he's this label. Our soldiers aren't labels. Our police officers aren't labels. Our EMTs, firefighters, they're not labels. National Guard, anybody that serves in any form to protect our freedoms and liberties, they're not a label. They're somebody that's out there putting their lives on the line to protect those ideas of freedom, liberty, and justice, to protect our Constitution. Yes, I'm first to tell you, there's tons of bad apples in every group. There's always going to be. You know, we call out the bad apples, not the group. All those bad apples do is tarnish the group who's trying to do the right thing. Those that are trying to protect and serve. You know, to me, Memorial Day, it's just not about the soldiers. You know, to me, on Memorial Day, it's about everyone. Everyone that puts on a uniform. Whether it be a military uniform, police uniform, firefighter uniform, whatever the uniform. Those that believe and take an oath to protect our Constitution, to protect and serve, that put their lives on the line each and every day, those are the ones we remember. Those are the ones we don't allow their voices to ever go silent. Why don't we allow our World War II soldiers' voices to go silent? So we never see another Adolf Hitler. So we never see that part of history ever repeat itself. Same way with our founding fathers and forefathers that fought in the Revolutionary War. Because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have a Constitution, a Bill of Rights, the concept of freedom, liberty. We'd still be under rule of the crown. For as we can see, we wouldn't even be able to freely speak here on this platform without fear of being persecuted. You know, I look back and think about, man, what would our forefathers say about today's age? I don't think they'd have too many good things to say about today's age. Oh, I think a few of them would have something to say. Like, maybe it's time we bring the dueling law back. As barbaric as it may sound, man, at least they policed themselves in Congress during their time. You know, I don't think they would be too happy at the state of affairs with our elected officials. Well, some of those patriots, I think we all know what they'd say. You know, we have to realize that everybody's voice is important. Whether we agree or disagree with them. How's that one for you? Why? Because it's protected. And that's a lot of the problem. oh, I don't care if this person gets censored. I don't agree with him. When you have that attitude, and you say such a thing, you're actually disrespecting all those that have served and died to protect your freedoms. Because that person has the very same freedoms to express themselves and their views, whether we like it or not. That's what these people died for today. That's why we remember them today. So we can have a view, an opinion that differs from everybody else. I look at how we got to this point, the advances, the great advancement, where the true idea of equality for everybody. Yes, it has its issues, and that's because of corporations and people's mindsets. But we live in a country where it doesn't matter your color of your skin, your religious belief, your views and opinions, you're an American. You have the very same freedoms. You're supposed to be treated equally. For the most part, everybody is. But we get lost in a sauce somewhere when we see somebody that has a different religious view or a different opinion and view. Then we think, well, they don't have that right. That's the problem. That's kind of how we got to where we're at today. We've gotten to the point where we're always judging and not listening. And we're always judging, but yet we're never questioning. Why does that person have that view or opinion? Why does he or she think that this is going on? How many people out there that are the younger generations truly know why we celebrate Memorial Day? How far do they grasp the idea of Memorial Day? Do they grasp what sacrifices were truly made? Some people say, oh, they fought in a war that we shouldn't have been in. You might be right on that part. Except for that's not why they fought that war. Not why the soldier fought that war. The soldier follows orders and goes where they're told. They joined and signed up in defense of your freedoms, your Constitution, your Bill of Rights. That's why they joined up. They joined up so others didn't have to. They joined up because they believe in a beautiful America. They believe in an American dream. They believe that our country has something that no other country has. And you know what? It does. For those of you who don't think it does, for those that say, well, we're hated because of all these wars. We're not hated because of the wars. We're hated because of the very freedoms we have. The ability for every woman to be out there to be treated equal to a man. For every person, no matter what religion or skin color, to be treated equal and have the very same freedoms that is outlined in the Constitution, to be protected. We're hated because we have a voice. We can freely speak it, which goes against a lot of dictators, a lot of certain religious groups who don't believe women should have rights. That's why we're hated. Not because of the wars, because of the idea that America promotes to the world, the morals, the ideology of freedom. That's why people put on that uniform. They do it for us. They also do it for the world to see, for those that are oppressed. And what do we get? What do they get in return when they come home? For those that come home. Bad VA hospitals. Many of them end up homeless. What about the families that lost their loved ones? Because the families pay just as much of a price for our freedoms as the soldier. They know the true value of freedom and the loss that could come from it. We live in a day and age where we have to question things. We have to question everything. At the same time, we have to not forget what this country was built upon. Not forget why people don that uniform. You know, we need to start demanding more of our schools. To start teaching history, not omitting things that happened. Oh, it leaves a bad blemish on what America is. No, America is what it is today because of those blemishes, because of the Boston Tea Party, because of the Civil War, because of the French and Indian War. You know, I know, most people have never stepped outside of the United States, had the privilege of going to some other countries. So they only see what's put in front of their TV or what's on posted on the internet. And I got a quick reality check of how other countries' politics are when I was in Brazil at the age of 9. When I watched a politician get gunned down and nobody lifted a finger. how only the corrupt were ever allowed to run office. Anybody else that tried was pushed out of the way. I also got to see, a lot of people are talking about what's happening in Brazil today with the oil, the gas. Well, bad news is that ain't new. Not the first time the truckers protested. Not the first time they've had issues. It used to be just as bad in the 80s and 90s when it was the Crusade, and it was based on the American dollar. The American dollar going up, guess what? Gas prices would go up at the petrol fuel stations. I remember seeing what's happening now back in 89 and 88. It's not new. It happens all the time. And we've seen that they tried to clean up their little cesspool. They actually tried to. We talked about draining the swamp. Well, they tried it. Yeah, it's for debate how well it worked. But we also seen, let this be a lesson, we've seen them order the military into the streets. We talk about draining the swamp, getting rid of the corruption that needs to happen. But also know there is a consequence to that. It's just not as easy as rounding everybody up. They will cause civil unrest. That's something our forefathers understood and knew. That's something, if you study history, you'll understand and know. It's one of those things, be careful what you wish for. Like all of us around here in Northwest Ohio, man, we need the rain to stop. We've had since Thursday, finally a nice streak of no rain. Well, no, we got a brief thunderstorm Saturday afternoon. But yesterday was 90. Today's been 94. And we still got our rivers are flooded. But yet, we wanted the rain to stop. Well, rain stops, guess what? We got summer-like temperatures, 94 in May. Not complaining, because we do need to dry out. In fact, I'm enjoying it immensely. But it goes back to what you say, careful what you wish for, careful what you want. Know what comes with this. This is something our soldiers know. Anybody that puts on a uniform, whether it be police, this is something they know and understand. We have so many issues. In fact, we got so many issues, it's hard to pick one to focus on. Okay, which one's important and not so much of a distraction? Because we have a bunch of distractions. There's so many real important issues. That's something I've been, this month, when I get time to sit down and actually work on something. I've got about 3 notebook pages worth of just jotted down notes of things I want to talk about, things I want to put in a magazine. Problem is, I haven't had the time. Once we got some brief, whether it's either been working on a vehicle, getting the property cleaned up, trees trimmed, ankle-high grass mowed, where it's not flooded. It's like I haven't had no time to sit down and do anything. So I don't even know if the magazine's going to come out on time. And actually, I don't know if I'm even going to put it out because right now it's just me doing it. Which I want to do a magazine, but at the same time, I'm going to stick to what I said. I'm not going to be the only one doing it. If I can't get people to contribute, it tells me nobody's interested. And I'll just leave it at that. And maybe come fall when everything settles back down, pick it back up again and try. I don't know. what I do now is there's a lot of stuff that needs to be talked about. A lot of things that, collaboration I wouldn't mind doing with a couple of people on various subjects. These are the things that I find that are important. Remembering our histories. Understanding that in a lot of places, the VA halls and the Legion halls are strapped for cash, where they don't have enough to buy the flags to plant in the cemeteries. I wish I'd kind of knew about that beforehand. Maybe we could have done something to help a couple of these VA halls out and Legion halls. That kind of ruined my mood for the day when I seen that. Because to me, like I said, I grew up in the middle. My whole family friend, just not on my dad's side. My mom's side, she's from Brazil. She's an American citizen now, but I have family in Brazil. Even my family. Well, I kind of got to keep it real on that one. When you turn 16, you really don't have a choice. But most of my family in Brazil, they served more than the 4 years that's required in the military. I have cousins that are abroad right now. One's in Africa and one's in France, I believe, from Brazil. One just left from the United States. He was doing some work here with our military. Now, I come from a very proud family that always served. I couldn't because of my shoulder. Couldn't pass the physical. And I wanted to, although that also would have been going against my grandfather's wishes, which I was in the process of doing anyway, because he didn't want us kids to serve. It's like he said, I served, your uncles served, so you guys wouldn't have to. But most of us, even my cousins, they've all served. Most of them did. So, it's something that we value. I've given brief history of my family. My family's name is on the Constitution. We're very, when it comes to military patriotism, we're very stout on that. We're very touchy when it comes to freedoms being imposed or taken away. Because it's what our families fought for. It's something that's passed down from each generation of our family. The history of our family. The history, the Revolutionary War, and the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. It's why Memorial Day for us has always been about honoring the past, honoring those that serve and that have sacrificed. I remember on Memorial Day when my grandfather was alive and his brothers were younger. They're all, like I said, there's only one left. He's 94. We all used to get together. They'd invite their friends that served with them over. Some years we'd rent out the A Hall or the Legion Hall, have cookouts for the vets. And I remember hearing the stories, the old war stories. Sadly, in this day and age, you don't see that much anymore. You don't see the youth interacting with them. I'd like to see more of that come back. More of that those traditions honored in the communities. For many of us, it's just not one day that we remember and set aside. I know of like 10 friends I've had that lost their lives overseas over the years. Putting that uniform on, not because they want to go fight a war, but because they want to defend and protect our constitutional rights, our freedoms, our liberties. Because they want to show the world that their idea and belief in the American dream is still alive, that this is a great country. In a sense, a lot of our soldiers are ambassadors to the world, showing, it's important to protect these freedoms. It's important to be free. Because when you're not free, you're slaves to a system, or to a dictator or government or whatever it may be. You can't freely express yourselves. You don't have, your rights aren't protected. Somebody accuse you of something, at least you have protection. You have a system in place that's meant to protect you. A due process. Other countries don't have that. They'll just come in there, round you up, and they might throw you, lock you away and throw away the key. You might not, it might be 2-3 years before you see a day in court. Or you might go right in front of a magistrate the same day and sentenced and locked up. Yeah, for those who don't think that happened, well, we've seen what happened in the UK last week. Somebody just reporting a story, covering a story. But oh no, we don't want you talking about this group of people. Therefore, you violated the peace. Tried, convicted, locked up all on the same day. Allegedly. Which I'm pretty sure the allegedly part's already been proven to be accurate. So. And that's why we had a Revolutionary War, so that wouldn't happen here. That's, That's why we have a Constitution. And it's time that we all start reminding our politicians, reminding our statesmen that our freedoms is not a bargaining chip. Our freedoms, our Constitution, our Bill of Rights, isn't for you to interpret and change. By even doing so, they're committing treason. They're violating the very oaths of office they take to either the federal or the state. They're violating our trust when they do stuff like that. When they even open their mouths and talk about doing it. And it's time that us as Americans put all those differences aside. Quit letting them divide us. Come together as Americans and start standing up. Start saying, we're not putting you back in office. Why? Because when you were in office, you said this. You wanted to take our freedom of speech away. Or you wanted to take our Second Amendment right away. We need to stop voting those very people back into office. And we need to pay attention when state officials try to pass legislation that says, oh, if you talk about that, you can be arrested. I haven't yet, as far as I haven't seen if the Maryland governor has signed that bill yet. Been kind of following it. Because that everyone should have an issue with. You know, we should be demanding that in fact, we should be demanding that our Congress, instead of telling these platforms to censor what is being said, they should be passing a law that these platforms have to honor and recognize our constitutional rights as Americans. Because they are here in America. That's the part I don't get, guys. Any other country can do it and force these platforms to honor their country's laws. But our elected officials will not force these platforms and these corporations to honor our Constitution laws. Why is that? Anybody have you ever asked yourself this? Why is that? Why can the UK, Europe, EU, China, Germany force these platforms to honor their country's laws, but our country, our government, won't do the same and force these platforms to honor our constitutional laws? Instead, they want to say, oh, collusion, interfering with our elections, foreign interference. Bots did it. Well, it's not good for 2020 either. It's not good, period, because here's what the internet allows us to do. Here's what these social platforms allows us to do. It allows us to question things. It allows us to talk about and debate things that they don't want us talking about and debating. They don't want us questioning what this politician believes and how he votes. They want us to believe exactly what the propaganda that their label pays for advertising to show us. This is what this person is about. Don't question it. How dare you question this politician? And that's exactly why Maryland tried to wrote that legislation and that bill. So you couldn't question a politician. By doing so, he committed a crime. And if that governor signs that bill, guys, we are in serious trouble. I've tried to explain this to you. Most people, I don't know why you guys don't get it. Doesn't matter what state you're in, because it becomes a law. Once that law is passed, it is now a law that any state including federal branches, can look at and adapt and quote from. You know, there's going to be people out there that's going to fight it, but how long does it take for that to get to the Supreme Court? Because it's where it will end up. 6 months, a year, 4 or 5 years? Is there actually enough money to fight it all the way up to the Supreme Court? And most of our cases, we could never fight something like that all the way up to the courts. Because that's how they bury people. That's how they stop people from getting... I mean, our legal system is so screwed up, it's not even funny. The process we have to go through to prove innocence, or the process we have to go through when our freedoms and liberties have been violated. Most people don't have the money to fight the cases all the way up to the Supreme Court. And they use that as an advantage. Granted, thankfully, we do have organizations out there that take on these things, but they're privately funded through donations and stuff. And they can only do so much. That is why it is so important that when we see issues like that, we talk about them. We spread the word. Bring awareness to those things. And every day it gets harder and harder which topic to bring awareness to. Because we get so much information, so much things that are going on. And it's, believe it or not, guys, it's strategically done that way. Why it keeps you scattered, divided. It keeps you from, while you're focused on here, this happens. Or this gets slid in while you're focused on something major. That is major. Your state does something that you didn't even know about until it's too late while you were focused on this. I mean, that's the whole problem. That's why, you know, you see some of these videos that are pointing these out, share it. Because it needs to be put out there, you know. You know, I know a lot of people right now, they're talking about the Tony Robinson thing, you know. Yeah, I've used it for examples today. But I can't focus on that. Because if I'm focusing on that, it's now a distraction for the things that are happening in my own backyard, the things happening around me, with things that happen in our own government. I will use it, hint at it, talk about it, use it as an example because it's important. Just like the knife ban was important. How long before they aren't doing that here? You know, that's a huge problem with our own government. Our own government allows other countries to influence what they do. You know, I have no problem with allies. We have allies, but there's a line you draw. That line is, we don't interfere with your political politics. You don't interfere with ours. You don't dictate what our policies for our country, for our citizens are to be. Now, I have a problem with politicians that swear their allegiance to the United States and Israel. Israel is not our country. They're an ally. We support them. But we do not support the politics. We do not allow them to dictate our policy. That is, we can take that clear back down through history to the founding of this country, why we have a Constitution and a Bill of Rights. No other country has a right to dictate our policy, our freedoms, our liberties. Our congressmen should not be swearing allegiance to no other country. Their allegiance belongs to the people, us. And I know a bunch of people gets offended when you talk about that. Well, Israel's an ally. Nothing more. You know, Russia used to be an ally during World War II. Many people remember that. Yet they're our enemy now. They're the boogeyman now. We blame everything on them. France, UK, they're our allies. Japan, he was our enemy. Now they're our allies. Allies come and go. Just like when we talk about the UN. The UN should never have any say over our policies, our constitutions, our freedoms. They should have no say on politics to our country. Because they aren't even a country. You know, but people don't want to hear those things. We've got states that don't want to hear those things. They want to adapt to UN policies. They want to, oh, we'll just call in the UN. And that's something, people need to pay attention to. People still talk about drain the swamp, arrest them. Okay, just say we do. How many rogue states do we have right now that say, screw what our government says? We don't care. We don't care what your Justice Department says. We don't care what the federal law says. How many of those states, even when it comes to national security issues, have said, no, that don't apply? You don't think some of these states wouldn't call upon the UN if we started really cleaning up the corruption? Something for you to think about. Yep. Illinois, California, and there's about 18 more that I can name. I mean, we've seen some of the crazy laws that have been passed and changed in California that are more adapted to the UN's agenda and what they want. I have a problem with that because you have no say when it comes to our freedoms in this country. In fact, I have a huge problem that we pay to be the police of the world. We pay the UN to be the UN's whipping post. Why do I say whipping post? Because anywhere we go, the UN sends us. Not the UN that gets the blame. Not the UN that country hates. It becomes us, the United States. Fact is, the UN don't respect our Constitution. They don't want us to have the freedoms that we have. The UN has talked about we need to strip people of their firearms here in our country. To me, that's not a friend. That's not even an ally. That's an enemy. When they start talking about that, that's more dictatorship. Or So it's a group of countries. So I guess that'd be what, authoritarianism? No. So many of the things that make this country so great is the very same things that make this country so hated in many other countries and despised because of the very freedoms that we have, that they don't want their people to have. They don't even want their people to know that we have these freedoms. But yet, here we get laxed. We forget these things. We got younger generations that aren't even being taught the real history, the real sacrifice that people in uniform have made, and will make to protect those freedoms, those liberties. You know, and that's something, we talked about. We'll never forget those that have died and laid down their lives. Well, let's not forget why they've done it. Why they continue to do it. So that we can have these very freedoms. Let us not allow our politicians to forget. And call them out when they use those that have fallen to suit their political agenda, but yet 2 days later will go in and try to pass laws that strip our freedom. They're not honoring those that fell. They're dishonoring them. It's time to quit playing by the label game. Screw the label. No, you never hear anything about them. And there's many such cases of that where nobody talks about. We're getting to a point in time where you start talking about the Civil War and the battles. Oh, you're a racist because you're honoring and remembering even the Confederate soldiers that died. Doesn't matter what war they fought in. They had beliefs. They fought for those beliefs. They fought for those freedoms and liberties that they believed in. So many countless battles that have been fought throughout this whole country. The Alamo. Grayson Falls War. Oh, that's old. I haven't heard about. Remember, forgotten about that one. They don't even teach that in history anymore. You know, can't argue with that one. We are free TV. And there's many that are. There's a lot of channels out there that could be making huge differences, but don't. You know, there's so many good causes out there, so many good things that we could be giving back to our communities. There's so many movements that we could start if we could just put our differences aside, realize that it's all about our freedoms. You know, every one of us falls in the same category when they come after our freedoms. But we get caught with the labels. We get caught with the things that divide us. You know, we get caught up, oh, it's a First Amendment issue, it's a Second Amendment issue. No. One issue, your very freedoms, your very rights and liberties. No matter what amendment it is, it's still about our freedoms. You know, that should always be a rallying cry. That should be the cry that ceases the divisions, the arguments of who's right or wrong. That's something our forefathers understood. That's something every serviceman that's ever served in any war has understood. What our vets understand. You know, it's when we think of Memorial Day, it's all these histories that's taken place in this country. All the things that led us to where we're at today. The sacrifices that were made. And why future generations will make the same sacrifices. But we have to make changes. We have to change how they pit us against each other. We need to stand up to our school systems that teach Common Core, that teach things our kids shouldn't even be learning, and they should be learning our basic and principles of our history, not the watered-down version of our history, our true identity, because our history is what made this country what it is today. No, those are actually wars that took place here in the United States. Wars and events that have been forgotten. you know. But I'm going to wrap things up. The stream's going on in about an hour and a half. Hope you guys enjoyed your weekend. For those that will be traveling, safe. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your week. And I will see you on the next video. Good night, everyone.